So, how do we deploy generosity? These are just some thoughts I've been thinking. Christians are more generous than the average population. I think on average, I don't, to be honest, I don't know if these are Bay Area wide or nationwide. I've heard the stats and I think they're pretty similar. I think nationwide Christians give, no, the average population gives to nonprofits about 1.3% of our income. Christians are more generous than the average population, those who identify as Christian, and give about double that. It's like 2.3 or 2, something like that. Okay. Um, but on the flip side of that, nearly every Christian, at least intellectually, consents that the scriptures, which are the holy book of Christians, teaches a tithe and that we should be generous. No one denies that generosity is an attribute that God desires, and that a tithe should be given 10%. So we're falling quite short of that. Um, I think I think we should. I mean, I think generosity is the best practice. I think whether you're someone who believes in uh, faith, I think pretty much every major religion teaches generosity. Um, Both Jewish, Christian, and Muslim religions, and that stream all teach a tithe, I believe. So encourage generosity. Um, Many Christians hold that in the New Testament, Jesus basically teaches that tithe is kind of minimal. That uh, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, and we're supposed to give generously above and beyond. Um, you know, Turn the other cheek. Someone wants to take a cloak. Someone wants to, wants to go take a cloak, walk with them 2 miles, something like that. Anyways, we're supposed to do more beyond. That's one way of approaching an issue and proving it. I think we could do so much good if we were more generous as a society. But I also don't think that's the whole issue of the problem. I think we need, because if you look at issues like homelessness, um, it's not because they don't have the issue is not solved because there's not enough money being thrown at it. And here in the Bay Area and San Francisco and California, we're a prime example of it. We're spending an awful lot of money on homelessness. Uh, Spend a whole lot of money trying to solve the problem, and we spend a whole lot of money just maintaining status quo. Nationwide, I heard that the figure is for a person living on the streets, homeless, it costs taxpayer $60,000 on average nationwide um, to subsidize to pay for that lifestyle. So actually, homelessness is not cheap. Um, and the primary, I think the biggest expense is in emergency room visits because if you're living on the streets, you're homeless, the emergency room becomes your de facto healthcare clinic, and it's a very, very expensive way to deliver medical care. There's also a very large expense in like cleanup and sanitation, police, and other services. And then there's all this money we're throwing at it to, in quotes, solve it. But over the last 30 years in California, we have not solved it. It's increased year over year, but doesn't mean it's because no city ever thought we should solve this, and no city ever thought to come up with a 5 to 10 year plan to decrease it. In fact, you just look back and that's our history is littered with 5 to 10 year projections of how we're going to decrease homelessness by 25% or whatever X amount is. And we failed at all of those. The issue is not just deploying money, although I would strongly argue that people, particularly people with passion and conviction, can deploy money directly if they're as philanthropists, as generous people, better than government can. But we also, although not always, many, many times giving money makes the problem worse, not better. So, what I think we need to do is we need to strive to be more generous, but also to be wiser. There's a passage where I believe it was Jesus Christ exhorts us to be as shrewd as serpents, but as innocent as doves. So pure of heart, innocent, and above reproach, but also smart and savvy in how we do things. So I think we need to be more generous. That's a best practice, and we need to do that. But we also need to be wiser. We need to educate ourselves and develop a better way of giving. I think we need to be collaborative. I think the best practice is both collaboration among givers, but also where I see the magic is where we can bring different sectors all together. And if we can bring nonprofit service providers together, if we can also bring them together with the community, and that's where the faith community is so powerful, because people, pastors and leaders can mobilize so many people if they're motivated to do that. Getting business leaders together also, and also getting the funders. And rather than the old model is often, on one hand, society relegates doing good to those on the ground who are, the social service providers, and they're the professionals. We let them do it. I think we need to shift that mindset and say we all need to come together. We all need to own the problem. And rather than a professional few setting out a vision of how we're going to do it, figuring it out, and then approaching funders and say, fund us for what we're doing. If we can all get together on the front end and have the funders involved in the conversation right from the get-go and partner together on that way, where they've implemented that, they have gotten amazing results. I think that is the blueprint of how we need to do things. We need to do things corporately. We need to be more generous, but we also need to collaborate together to deploy our generosity with greater transparency, greater accountability, greater collaboration, and not just accountability, but the right matrix. What is the end goal? So often we measure inputs, and it's like a business that is doing a stellar job of tracking its KPIs, but never bothers to check on its bottom line. So all their performance indicators look great, but it turns out each group is manipulating that, and the real bottom line is not being met. So often we measure the wrong things. We end up measuring services. We end up measuring inputs, but we're not even tracking outputs. We're not tracking lives transformed. We're also not tracking the overall health of the city or of the community that we're intending to serve. Those are the things I'm hoping we can change and be more savvy in the way we deploy our generosity.